Hello everybody! Welcome back to my channel where stories and other random things take center stage and imagination is prized above all. Happy Saturday! I hope you guys are having a fantastic morning. We're continuing to have a wonderful rest of the day. Welcome to today's video and the very first of 2023. 2023. You know, in my other videos, when I tell you what time or when I'm recording this, or when I keep mentioning the date, I keep mentioning 2021 because honestly 2022 feels like 2021 but with like, I don't know, some differences, but it genuinely feels like 2021. Like 2020 seems to still have like a shadow on us. Like 2021 still felt like 2020, and 2021 still kind of like 2022 kind of feels like 2021 a bit. So it's fine, I guess, right? It's fine. So it's the first video of 2023. I'm pretty excited, and we're going to start with Bridgerton Season 2. If you have not watched my previous Bridgerton content, I'll leave a playlist. I have reviewed The Duke and I, followed by Season 1. And for this, I read and reviewed The Viscount Who Loved Me in preparation for Season 2, because Season 1 focuses on Daphne and Simon, while Season 2 of Bridgerton focuses on Kate and Anthony. And Season 2 was pretty good. I have heard some criticisms of even the subplots, but I did enjoy the subplots a little bit. I really did. I liked the subplots, and it was really interesting. So now let's talk about the adaptation of The Viscount Who Loved Me. So the book is technically about two women entering the marriage market and looking for, each looking for a husband. Kate is like 21. I think Edwina is 17 in the book. And Kate is technically in the age where she is really late into the marriage market, and she'll basically become a spinster if she doesn't get married. And basically she is, they're looking for husbands in order to kind of support them, and because, their wealth is kind of running out. And basically, Edwina has said that she will not marry anyone unless she gets Kate's blessing. So Kate, and like Anthony takes a liking to, I guess, Edwina, or like he's like, I'm gonna make her my wife. Like he just chooses her. But the only problem is that Kate will not let him get close to Edwina at all. She does everything to keep them apart, but then they start falling in love. It's like an enemies to lovers thing. It's fine. I love enemies to lovers, and I'm totally not disappointed that this book kind of messed up the format for me. So that's like the basic premise. And the same thing happens in Season 2 as a premise, but it is a little bit different. There's actually a lot of changes. This actually diverges from the source material. So the adaptation takes it takes inspiration from the original source material, but it doesn't outright use the source material. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go ahead and just like you don't get to just say it doesn't. You don't like what am I thinking? Okay. So you don't get to you don't get to see everything in that material. Some parts are there, some parts are not. For example, the things that were explored were Anthony's grief, and I think that was explored a little bit more, the grief. But they took away like his thoughts of mortality. But they explored the grief he felt after losing his father, and I think that was explored a little bit more in the TV show, especially with his relationship with Violet. And I love Mama Bridgerton. They're amazing. One of the things that they did was they actually did change, they changed the last names. So Kate is no longer Sheffield, she is Sharma. But Edwina is Edwina Sheffield Sharma. Turns out they were part of like the backstory that they have is that they were part of a she chose Mary chose a chose a clerk, and the family was against it. And if she married, they basically kind of like disowned her, and she married this guy anyway, becoming Sharma. And they lived in India and everything. So everything was changed, including how things went after her father died. The one thing that I think was kind of hinted at, but barely in the TV show, was Kate's fear of like the violent storms. She was really afraid of thunder. And in the book, though I had some gripes about the way it was handled at the end, I did think it was handled better, like her reasoning for why she was afraid of thunder. But in the show, it was none of it was explored. We don't know anything about we don't get a lot of like we get part of Kate's backstory, but barely. Kate is definitely given a lot more depth. I think there's a little bit of depth with her in the book, but she's given like a lot more depth in the show in certain areas. In the show, she's actually a lot older. She's 26, and she is and she basically kind of puts a lot of responsibility on herself to make sure that her family is well supported and does not consider herself at all. So there is an interesting relationship between her and Edwina when it comes to, you know, the way that they see things, and the way that there is even some conflict, which I thought was definitely missing in the book. But you know how much they love each other, but there's still like conflict, which I thought was interesting. The conflict was really interesting. I also kind of found the story a little kind of more believable in this. And something I appreciated about season 2 actually was it didn't do what season 1 did, which was adapt a definitely unconsensual sex scene. Like, you know season 1, if you read The Duke and I, you know, if you watch season 1 of Bridgerton, you know. And I hated that in season 1 they adapted that scene. There was no reason for it. There was no reason to the plot line. Even in the book, it kind of doesn't fit the plot line, because in the book of The Duke and I, the characters do no work. They do no work to reach a happy ending. And in the book, neither do Anthony and Kate. They really don't do that much work. Even though I prefer Anthony and Kate to Daphne and Simon, they don't do that much work to reach the ending that they get. He just realizes he loves her, but he does nothing. Like, there is no work. You know what I mean? There's no work to that. And even their wedding night was kind of like terrible consent. Like, there was like coercion. And there was like dubious consent at best. I say dubious because like the manipulation and coercion kind of makes for a pretty bad consensual thing. And I in my opinion, so the fact that there's coercion makes for dubious consent in my opinion. And because of that, I find myself, I'm kind of like, you know, this is not good, okay? I know that this isn't good. Like, the coercion is not good, because she asked him to wait. In season 2, there is no dubious consent, and there's definitely no issues with consent. What there is a pretty interesting story about them. I will say that the fact that unlike Daphne and Simon, it took all the way till the end for them to kind of realize their feelings, or for everybody else to kind of realize their feelings. And I think that was good. Honestly. So I actually preferred the show version of their romance to the book version. Now let's continue on with the rest of the show, because the rest of the show was really interesting. There are a bunch of different subplots. We still have Lady Whistledown, how nobody knows it, but like at the end of Bridgerton season 1, it is revealed that it is Penelope who is Lady Whistledown. And in this season, we kind of understand how she gets all the things that she gets, and a lot of it is because she is the one person nobody notices. She is kind of like a wallflower. Like she's the invisible person. Nobody notices her. Nobody pays attention to Penelope. Even her own mother kind of like pushes her aside, and it's like just doesn't consider her, right? So even like she doesn't consider her, which means that Penelope can kind of get away with, well, anything actually. So and it's interesting because the fact that she made a choice on this is what made me interesting, because we know she has a lot of money and her family is suffering, but she's not like that and everything, but she's not giving them any money. But I also feel like if she would have tried to help or like confessed to Lady Whistledown, her family, like her mother specifically, would have tried to control what she wrote, how she wrote it, and would probably take away her money too, and maybe even prohibited her from writing anything at all. So it's really interesting how she, the whole tabloid aspect here, and how she is. But in this season, we do get kind of an interesting storyline involved with her, and how like Eloise and her are close friends. Eloise continues to be an awesome feminist icon. I love her. I love her. Eloise is amazing. In the books, there's barely anything of Eloise. She kind of just is. She kind of develops a bit of a relationship with Kate, but whatever. And in the books, though, she is getting more. I'm sorry, in the show, she's getting more attraction. She's more into more radical beliefs and everything, and she has an interesting storyline. And the storyline between though Eloise and Penelope is kind of like a cat and mouse game, where Penelope is trying to keep her identity hidden from the Queen, and definitely from Eloise, who is still who definitely still wants to find who Lady Whistledown is. And in the end, she does find out who Lady Whistledown is. And she finds out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, which then leads to a conflict between the friends. And it ends in such a way that I'm just like, where are we going with this? You know, where is... what's going to happen in their friendships? Because a lot of things happen. Like Penelope, you kind of feel for Penelope a little bit. In season 1, like... she kind of just basically releases everybody's gossip, right? Both Bridgerton and whoever. It doesn't matter. Even her own family. And in season 1, we know that she has a crush on Colin. We know from the very beginning she has a crush on Colin, right? Colin only sees her as his friend. In season 1, he falls for her cousin Marina. Who I actually thought she was a show original, but I recently found out that apparently her and Philip Crane are actually in the books. They're actually characters from the books, but they changed the like who they were. Turns out Marina was actually a distant cousin of Eloise's in the Bridgertons, and Philip Crane married her, and it seems like some of the story is the same. I recently found this out because I was watching someone rank Bridgerton books, and apparently Marina is part of it, and is part of it, and apparently she's a distant cousin from the Bridgertons, and like that she did have a lover that seemed to be Philip's brother, and but then the lover dies, and she ends up marrying Philip Crane, and they have twins, which is interesting because we do see Marina again, and we see that she's content in her life and that she does have twins. We see her because Colin does decide to visit her, and him and Philip also strike up a bit of a friendship. Colin has an interesting thing in this season. I'm not gonna say I'm fully into him right now, but he truly is the most gentleman of the brothers. Him and Benedict are probably the ones that are kind of like the more gentlemanly of the Bridgerton brothers, and those are like the male characters I like the most. Like Anthony, in season 1, I found him interesting and protective, but also a bit of an asshole. Season 2, similar, but not as bad. And then Benedict and Colin are kind of like really interesting. Colin is still maturing, and Benedict is still trying to find purpose, which I like. So yeah, in season 1, we find out that she's in love with him, and she knows that Marina is going to seduce Colin and, you know, basically marry him, and she's lying to him. So she ends up revealing the pregnancy in her Lady Whistledown gossip column, and that ends up affecting Marina, but it also ends up affecting the rest of the Featherington family, which kind of makes Penelope a little bit petty, but also you kind of feel for her a little bit, like you're like, you know, she's your cousin. It is a bit petty. This is not the greatest thing for you to do. It's petty, and it's not a fair thing, right? Like you know right and wrong, and you realize it, but you also feel for her a little bit because she has a crush on this longtime friend who doesn't look at her the same way. In season 2, she is trying to advise Eloise, because Eloise is approaching, like, she's talking to this guy in the printing press, and it's like not the best neighborhood, but also if she's seen, people could start talking, and her reputation could be a bit, you know, like damaged a bit. Eloise also makes her society debut in season 2. But she hates all of them, and I like how this guy is talking to her, and he's like, and at some point she's insulted by this guy, and she leaves him in the middle of the dance. It's amazing, and she's just like, maybe when you talk to a woman, don't try to insult her entire sex in the process. And I don't feel like I want to dance with you, and she just leaves. And I like how she fills up her dance card with fake names. It's so funny. It's hilarious the way that she avoids these dances. And like the way that like Anthony and her kind of have like a scene of banter where he's like, I thought you women were taught how to dance, right? And she's like, and I thought you men could have, some of you could have like some worthwhile conversation. So I guess we were both wrong. And it was hilarious. It's genuinely funny to me. But Eloise's antics are funny. And what I liked is her storyline with Theo, who is a printing apprentice, and who she goes to talk to and starts talking, and they kind of, you know, start talking about Lady Whistledown, and there's a point where he starts helping her and gives her all the information. But then they you know, in order to protect her, Penelope decides to print that Eloise is meeting with political radicals who are questioning things about, you know, women and women's rights and equality and stuff like that, which she does do, but that kind of ruins her and ruins the Bridgertons, which, yeah, it's really sad. But like, she's trying to protect her and all that stuff, and that also has her and Theo kind of have a bit of a fallout, and eventually, you know, she does come back though at some point, and they talk or whatever, but then she ends up, you know, breaking things off. She's like, you know, I don't want to hurt you, even though he kind of takes it sort of the wrong way, but it's a thing. So she does have a bit of like she does end up seemingly developing feelings for Theo, which I thought was really interesting. And we see Violet kind of like, you know, the only thing that would bother me is if you're not being yourself. Like, tell me what's going on next time, you know? I think Violet has a really interesting arc in this season where we also explore her grief and the way that things were for her, and how Anthony during Hyacinth's birth, things were so difficult, and the doctor was about to ask Anthony, like, choose, you know, which one do you want to live, either your mother or the baby, and Anthony couldn't choose, like, whatever she wants, you know, whatever she wants, right? It all turned out well by the end, but even Violet was trying to protect him a little bit. But even after the death, Anthony kind of had to take over everything because he was the first son, and she was barely there, right? So she kind of just did very little. It's like she was barely there at all. And we also find that as Anthony matures throughout the season, we also see him develop more relationships with his siblings, more relationship with his siblings, with Gregory, even with Benedict a little bit. And we see him going through this arc, and we see his siblings go through an arc too. Daphne becomes a bit of a recurring character in the season, and everything. But when it comes to at least like, the Sharmas, we also see the conflict, the way like Kate kind of knows a little bit more, but Edwina is more naive. We have, we have Mary, who also felt kind of guilty at the end because she was barely there and Kate took over the responsibility that she shouldn't have had to take over, and how she was basically willing to give up her, give up her own happiness for Edwina. And it was really interesting. There was a lot of exploration on family and the complexities in general of people and relationships. By the end of the season, yes, Anthony and Kate are married and Edwina is not. But, but everyone's kind of happy for them, you know what I mean? And what's interesting about this is also that it ends with Eloise finding out Penelope's secret, but also with them arguing and saying things they probably wouldn't mean and all that stuff. So I'm curious to see how that works in season 3. And also Lady Danbury. We need to give that woman some love. She was a badass in season 1. In season 2, she's also a badass, and I love her. I like the antics that she and Violet kind of go to as matchmakers. But also, Lady Danbury is just amazing. Like, I love that one scene in a flashback in season 1. I know I'm talking about season 1 because I'm referencing it. And how, like, she tells Simon that she's going to help him, right? And she's like, listen, I was afraid of my own shadow. Like, I was afraid of everything. But at some point, I needed to step into the light. And I knew that. But I was afraid. And I knew that so I decided to instead, I decided, I made myself frightening. I sharpened my wit and my wardrobe, and I became the most frightening creature every time I walk into a room. That woman, yes. And in this season, she's great because she and Kate have some great scenes about like her advising Kate and helping out Kate because she is sponsoring the Sharmas because they're not rich, but the Sheffields have set up a specific condition on Edwina's marriage, right? And Lady Danbury is just like, she's there and she's trying to help Kate as best as she can with all the knowledge and wisdom that she has acquired. And I loved it. I think it was very sweet. Like Lady Danbury was not the most gentle person, but I think it works. She was really sweet and it was really, really interesting to get. So those are my very rambling thoughts. I am hoping that season 3 follows Benedict's story because we do set him up as there has been a lot of setup for him. There is setup with him in this season. Colin also got some setup as trying to figure out, who he is. What's interesting is, like, with the Featherington specifically, like, the subplot that comes up that people have some criticism over is that since Mr. Featherington, like, Lord Featherington dies, the new Lord Featherington, Jack, is now coming, and they don't know what's going to happen to them, right? And Lady Featherington, or Portia, is just trying to figure out what to do, right? And the guy that comes in kind of is not the best person. He's kind of like nonchalant about it, and he's trying to marry this Cressida, who also turns out not to be just a show original. She's also part of the books. Turns out she does appear in The Viscount Who Loved Me. So, and she, in the show, she's a bitch, but in the books, she's also a bitch. So, bitchy Cressida? All right, works for me, I guess. And, Jack Featherington is giving her this attention. So she does decide that, Portia plans this whole thing where she is going to where she's like, okay, we need someone who's kind of stupid and doesn't know how to, or doesn't run the house or whatever, and she wants to maintain some control, because at the end of the day, you know, she's not going to be always going to be Lady Featherington. She doesn't have any control now, because Jack kind of took over. He turns out to be he turns out to have been in America, basically, right? She's in everything. So she pushes this scene. She plans this thing where her daughter Prudence, because it can't be Philippa because Philippa is already engaged, is going to, like, they find them in this place where she lies to both of them or whatever, and they end up in what would be a scandalous compromise and whatever. So he is forced to be engaged to Prudence, who's technically like his cousin. Technically they're cousins. So they're engaged, and we find out that technically Portia engaged her daughter to a man who was poor, who's been lying about his wealth. He has none, and the way that he was going to supplement that was to marry into wealth. So she kind of ruined things, and they start planning this thing, like, you know, we can lie about this stuff, like we can give fake jewelry or whatever and pretend that they're from the mines that are technically a failure and get people to invest. So people at the ton were investing. Colin was going to also come up with, like, invest too, and then but he ended up looking at this stuff, you know. He ended up looking up at the guy and finds out when he was dancing with Cressida that the necklace was actually made of glass. And he tells him, you know, you get out and you leave the Featherington women alone, because he doesn't believe that, you know, Portia would have done anything malicious, right? And she's like, because they even went through this whole thing, right? And then they're talking at the end, like, he's like, okay, like he's going to expose them, basically. He's going to expose Jack if he doesn't leave the country. So Portia pretends to kind of be surprised, and even Penelope, I guess Penelope didn't know by the looks of it, and she's like, it's great that Colin knew everything, right? And it's interesting how Penelope thanks Colin, and she's like, you know, thanks for looking out for me. He's like, for us, he's like, I'll always look out for you. You're my friend. Like, I'll always look out for you. And it's super cute. I think their friendship is kind of adorable. Colin and Penelope's friendship is adorable. But basically, yeah. So she and him start talking. They had originally planned an escape when the ruse came. They were planning to escape before the ruse, and before the ruse was found out. But the daughters were going to stay, and they were going to be like, oh, we're just going to send for them. And he even, you know, makes a bit of an advance on Portia. Like, he kisses her and everything at the end. But Portia had her own plan, and she ended up forging a signature and everything, and she threatens to expose Jack if he doesn't leave. And she's like, I'm gonna keep she's like, I know you don't care about my daughters. Like, she realized he doesn't care about her daughters. And although Portia is a bit bitchy, you can say that she cares about at least 2 of her daughters. And she's like, you know, I know you don't care about them. You weren't planning to take them or even take them along with you or whatever. So she's like, I'm gonna keep a good percentage of this money, and I left you some money to be with your favorite person, yourself. But I'm gonna keep a good percentage of this to support myself and my daughters. But he had to go because she wasn't gonna expose him. And what she did to combat the whole thing about the heir is that if one of her daughters has a son, the moment they do, there's a forged signature that says that the estate will automatically go to that daughter's son. He becomes the heir, which means that they're basically protected. I found this subplot interesting because it feels like it's like sometimes women had to do a lot of things to survive in the past. Like, they had to do a lot of different things, right? And this just seemed to be one of them. So I found that really interesting that this part was kind of like examined in that end. Like, I felt like the examination of like some of the things that women would have had to do in the past in order to keep themselves in power, to have any power at all. Sometimes they were not great, but you also, even though you don't fully excuse them, you understand them. So that's something I found. Also, one thing at the end of the season that I want to say, Penelope overhears that Colin would never ever court her after she's asked, and she leaves crying, and I felt so bad because she really loves him. And at the end, it almost looks like Penelope will stop being Lady Whistledown, but she ends up continuing to write. And I'm like, yes, what are you going to be up to? Because Penelope, your identity as Lady Whistledown is now known by Eloise. So what is going to happen? Because the main reason that Eloise needed Lady Whistledown to write, like Lady Whistledown, like the main reason that Penelope wrote something in her Lady Whistledown column is because the Queen suspected Eloise to be Lady Whistledown after one of her footmen saw her go into the printing press, into the printing shop to talk to Theo at Edwina and Anthony's wedding. So because of that, she was suspected, and she was given 3 days, or she'll just to confess, or she'll ruin the family. So she was, and then Louise was planning to confess. So in order to protect her and get the suspicion away from Eloise, she wrote about her in her column, and that was the big part of the argument at the end of the season. Also, turns out Will, Simon's friend, did open a club, but he's barely getting any business. And at the end, Colin turns out to be playing a ruse after trying to figure out what the hell was there was something sus about the investment with Jack Featherington, and he had to yell at Will, and then at the end, he apologized, sorry, you were right, and I was just trying to figure out, all that stuff, but I had to play it and yell at you, I'm sorry. And it turns out he brought Will a couple of people though, and he ended up bringing Will business to his club, which I thought was an interesting subplot. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of things going on in season 2, kind of like in season 1. But I think it shows for an interesting story. Honestly, this goes into the brand of TV that I like to watch as trash TV, because I can literally play it in the background and I don't have to worry about it. I will say I did miss the steamy scenes, but there was a little bit of them, and I was okay with it, with the little that there was. So I believe I did hear in a video that the actor that plays Anthony is gay, and my thought was cool, you played a really good Anthony, I like you. And I found him interesting in general. So I found it interesting. So I'm assuming that's why there wasn't a lot of physical intimacy, but that's okay. I don't care. The show did it for me. Also, I found it very funny, by the way, Anthony, when he was looking for a wife, he had he had a specific list of things that he wanted, and it was very funny to me how he was interviewing these women, and there's a montage of him interviewing these women but also going to brothels. There's a montage back and forth in the first episode, and I found it very, very funny. But yeah, those are my rambly thoughts on Bridgerton season 2. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I really want to know. As of now, I know that Bridgerton has already been renewed for season 3 and 4, because when they renewed for season 2, they also renewed for season 3 and 4. And I want to see it. I want to know if it'll be out in 2023, but I don't know if it'll be out in 2023. I'm hoping the answer is yes. If not, I understand. But okay, at least this is out. So yeah, anyway, subscribe if you're interested in my content. Turn on notifications. I'll see you soon in another video. Comment down below and consume stories.
Silver unmuted. QuickTime player. Movie recording. Window. Stop recording. Button.